somehow entertaining you all before you had lunch. So made it a little easier here. And why am I involved in all of this? Tony, I didn't get caught in the beginning, that first wave. I got picked up at the end. I went online in '99, and I've been online, it seems, ever since. During the meeting, I've had 3 students who have contacted me, one I replied to so far, and that's my life since then, and for a lot of us as well who are still doing it online. I'm going to give you a little insider kind of info here before I introduce the panelists. These are the questions that they were asked to think about for the panel, among other things we'll talk about. But there are a lot of you here in the audience, I believe, who have experience teaching online, and you might want to think about these. I don't want to overfill your plates. This is food for thought, so it'll occupy a different organ of your body. We asked them, what did you find most difficult about teaching online? Are there things that are specific to your discipline that you think work particularly well in the online environment, or things that are particularly hard to convey? Do you or did you feel you had the necessary skills and support to teach online? Do you think that your college furnishes the needed supports for the faculty and students who are engaged in the online form of instruction? What forms of assessments would you recommend for the demonstration of the effectiveness of online instruction? Given that there are different teaching styles, are there faculty who are not suited for online instruction, even with an infrastructure of support for them? Given that there are different learning styles, are there students who are not suited for online instruction, even with an infrastructure of support for them? And here to tell us how they responded to these and other experiences related to online is James Richardson, who's Academic Director of Communications and Media Program at CUNY SBS and Associate Professor of New Media Technology at LaGuardia. Jennifer Sparrow at the far end. We're bookending you with another Academic Director of the School of Professional Studies, the Program in General Education, and Professor of English. And in the middle, Shirley Zaragoza, the Business Management Faculty at the Borough of Manhattan Community College, and whose experience is somewhat different than the others because I don't like to say we're in the trenches, but we're in the thick of it, and you've been there, and maybe we'll, again, get into it, but not right now. We'll hear why. So we didn't decide in what order anybody would go, so you have any preference? Anybody really burning to get out the answers to those questions?
Jennifer has a plane to catch.
Oh, yeah, that's true. We'll start with Jennifer.
Oh, I didn't know we were going to answer all of the questions at once.
No, not necessarily.
Any old thing. I think one of the biggest challenges, it was also one of the things that I really liked and found fun, but it was also difficult, is the challenge of faculty building online courses. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot because I started out, I guess I was maybe the second wave. I started teaching online because of the Sloan program, and going through that program helped me to build a course. And it was really, but outside of Sloan, I didn't really have a lot of other support. It was just kind of a labor of love, and I was feeling my way along and figuring things out as I went along. And I guess the best thing about it was that the students were just kind of into it, and the students were very patient. So I remember really fondly one English class where it was meant to be just a face-to-face class, but I told them I want to make an online course, and so would you guys go along with me? And I'm going to try out some of my online assignments on you. And they were really, it was a really great class and really supportive, and they actually gave me a plaque at the end of the class saying I went above and beyond. So that's a really happy memory of online teaching for me. And so now, in addition to teaching, I'm overseeing the general education program at CUNY SPS, and what I think the biggest challenge I'm facing right now, and what I think is hard for instructors, is support in building a course, because faculty have disciplinary expertise, and they may have an interest in technology, but then, at least at SPS, we are stuck using Blackboard. So they really need to also become Blackboard experts, or they need to become experts in things like sizing images to put in their courses, or figuring out how to make the fonts all consistent, which is a nightmare. And so that's a piece of it that I think is a real challenge for faculty, and where I think that we could do more to support them. Let faculty, design the course, select the readings, think of, there's different kinds of assignments. It'd be nice to have someone to bounce that idea off of. This is what I want to do, what would be a good assignment. But help or provide support to do these other kind of things, like making sure links work, things that they're tedious, but they're not trivial because they can really affect the student learning experience. So that's a challenge that I see. And then on the flip side of that is that I'm sure that all faculty constantly are getting, I know I am, bombarded by publishers who say, oh, here's a product, here's an online class, here's a course in the box. And so there's that tension that it would be very easy to teach an online course if you just want to let Pearson design it for you or let Macmillan design it for you. But then I think if we do that, we're losing one of the best things about teaching online, which is that we can make it less expensive for our students by providing access to open source materials. If a student uses a course a Pearson course, they're probably going to have to pay at least $100 for access to the course. So I'll stop now and let somebody else speak on that if you'd like.
Sure, I'll go. I always talk a lot anyway. I'll jump on to some of what Jennifer said in terms of one of the most difficult things for me is also kind of course design, but I look at it from a little bit different perspective. The issue in terms of the student experience, in terms of navigation, students being able to easily figure out the layout of the course. And let me back up. I'm on a task force at SBS for retention. And one of the things that we notice is that, usually if you get students through that first year, that first semester or so, there's a good chance that they'll stay. When we usually start seeing students drop out is that initial kind of, from an online education, is that initial semester when they come on and they're trying to figure out working in an online environment, figuring out where things reside. And those are some of the issues that I think we can resolve if we consolidate and make the course structures a little bit more consistent throughout, to take that initial barrier away, any type of technological hurdle in terms of where information sits, where assignments are basically need to be submitted, because they have to learn Blackboard or whatever course management system that they're using as well. And this is also the same with faculty. If we can remove that initial barrier, I usually see that at least the beginning courses usually start off much smoother. That's one of the challenges. One of the other things that's most difficult is just basically time management. Getting faculty and students used to teaching in an online environment. It's different. This is one of the reasons why Susan Coe and her group have the training that they provide before faculty are actually able to teach for SBS is critical, because teaching in an online environment is very different. The time management issues, the responsiveness that you have to basically respond to student requests, it's much more intensive. And I think students and faculty both have that initial thought that learning or teaching in an online environment is easy, and it's not. It's, I think, in many ways, much more difficult.
Shirley.
I want to say that I really enjoyed the teaching of online courses, but I have a course, Introduction to Business and Introduction to Finance. And Introduction to Finance was my online course, and it has quantitative parts to the course, which makes it more challenging for my students. Or maybe more challenging in general when mathematical computations are added to the online curriculum. And therefore, our attrition rate is different than other courses. And unfortunately, we're compared to other courses, and that presents a problem. So for us, mathematical computations is a challenge on site, and it's exaggerated when it's online. So you can see why our numbers may be conflicted with other courses, but that isn't taken into account when we're being evaluated and compared with other courses, and therefore provides a challenge for us. I no longer teach online because of that. My numbers were not coming in the same way that other course numbers were coming in, and therefore I was being given a high level of scrutiny. And no one in my department has taken on the challenge to reintroduce this course because of it. Yeah. So I want you to realize there is the challenging side. As much as I loved it, and I was one of the courses, I think actually the lead course that was picked up during Hurricane Katrina. And my course was in demand, and it was successful because I had students that were quite high level, most of which came from Tulane, and it was very exciting. They were committed to the quantitative as well as the qualitative information that was being shared. I teach Introduction to Finance, and it was an exciting semester. I really enjoyed teaching it. But just like my on-site classes, we do not compete on the same level with other courses because we have the quantitative factors that are involved, and therefore we may have a different attrition rate. And yet we are being compared on an equal platform with our other courses. So that has been a challenge, was my challenge, and when I was confronted with that, it left me no choice but to move on and not to teach online, and has not been picked up since.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes, Kurt?
Because that kind of dovetails into the next series of questions. Do you think that there's specific disciplines that work better in an online environment than others?
Well, if you have a course that has a higher attrition rate on site, it's obvious that you are going to continue that challenge online. So you can't be given the same numerical parallels with the other courses when you have a higher attrition rate even on site. So the parallels were not fair, and I would say to administrators, you have to consider that. And my course and those who had taken it and that were successful with it were extremely happy with it. I was so happy when we picked up students from Hurricane Katrina, and I got to know students from all over the country. It was a wonderful experience. But I was given a hard time when the numbers weren't coming in compared to the other courses.
Let me bring together a couple of things. Manfred Phillip, I believe, brought it up during the Q&A in a previous session with this seed question about assessment. I'd like each of you to comment on how you think the individual faculty member with the faculty's goals assesses how well they do in their course online, and comment on how their evaluators, whether it's an observer or the chair of their department, should assess how well they're doing. Because that's at the heart of your issue right here, right? So each of you comment from the instructor's point of view, what's assessment going to count the most, and from anyone evaluating them, what kind of assessments should be done?
Well, from the instructor's point of view, I'm always looking at, of course, how are students doing on assignments? What is my overall performance in the class? What assignment seems to be particularly challenging, or something where I get a whole bunch of questions at it, and then it's a flag to me that something's wrong and I need to go back and reevaluate it. At the end of the semester, I always like to ask the students anonymously to write a letter to their successors to say what do they know at the end of the class that they'd like to share with the next cohort of students coming in. And also if they have anything for me, any kind of recommendation for me to change the course, which I've always found very helpful, because I always get some tip from the students that I hadn't thought of before that helps me make the course better. In terms of evaluating the professor, in terms of sort of the peer observation, I guess is what you're thinking about. At SPS, we do have a peer observation form and a peer observation process, and as much as, to the extent that it's possible, we've tried to structure it just as it's stated in the contract, that the person being observed would enroll the observer in the course with 24 hours notice. We have two different options for that. Some people prefer to give kind of a guided tour with both people on the telephone and kind of talking their way through the observation form. The other way of doing it is just to say, okay, I'm going to be in your course on Wednesday, and to sort of look around, and our form has got different categories, instructor presence, assignments, assessments, and things like that. And so the observer would just go through and, check off. We have three, I can't remember, but three different categories: needs improvement, acceptable, or outstanding, or something like that, and then make comments. And speaking as a person who's done a lot of observations, one of the things I find is that perhaps I'm just not seeing something if I'm doing it myself and not being walked through it, I might miss something. And so usually what I advise people to do is to, write something down and say, I don't see this, and I flag it, because then when we have the post-observation conference, which is done by telephone or by Skype, those things can be clarified. So it's an observation, a conversation, and then a revision of the form, which goes back to the person being observed. There are some things, I was thinking about the question about, are faculty forced to do certain things? Do they have to use a certain platform or use certain tools? At our school, we're fully online, and they do have to use Blackboard because the students want they want a consistent environment. They time and time again in feedback, they ask for more consistency in course sites, and they balk at learning, e-portfolio and things like that. So not that I want to totally be a slave to the students, but I want to be respectful of their desire not to have the technology get in the way of the learning. And we are looking for instructor presence in the course site. So when I'm doing an observation, I want to see some sign that the professor is there. Is he making announcements each week? Is he on the discussion board responding to students and guiding the conversation? Do I see feedback to the students on their assignments? So to some extent, we are saying, yes, we want you to use the discussion board and we want you to be there in the class, but this is a fully online environment, and so if it's a face-to-face course, you want the teacher in the classroom, and that's how the teacher is there.
I guess I'll go. I'll ducktail once again off of some of what Jennifer says. We're both at the same place. One of the things from assessment standpoint, I think that just as how we do it at SBS, and comparing that against face-to-face assessments that I've done at the community college that I teach at LaGuardia, the assessments, I think, in the online arena are much more intense. I think you have a better idea of the entire scope of the course. You get to see student engagement, you get to see faculty engagement, not only for that one brief period, but you'll see what they've basically been doing throughout the course. I usually do a two-prong when I do an assessment for faculty. I look at, I'll go in, I'll have, look at the site, look at the discussion board, I'll look at the individual prompts that faculty have basically given. What's the engagement with the students, with the assignments that the prompts have hopefully sparked? What type of feedback does the instructor give to the students over the course of the discussion board, which is pretty extensive in most cases, much more extensive than when actually I have to do an evaluation of someone tomorrow out at LaGuardia. I'm going out on a Saturday. And you basically sit there for one class and you observe them. Now, the devious pirate, because I'm an online pirate, I'm always thinking about ways to beat the system. I mean, you could conceivably have a faculty member who's absolutely horrible, who'll pull out that one good lecture that he has, or that one good day, and actually teach. that's a lot harder to hide in an online environment, in a discussion board session, because you see over a period of time what they've been doing. So from an assessment standpoint, when I hear people kind of balk, well, how are we going to assess online, education? In many ways, if it's done correctly, it's way more intensive. I know I'm a little bit off topic, but from a faculty standpoint, what instructors generally, what I'm hoping that my instructors are looking to do is that level of engagement. And this is when I went back before talking about having faculty understand that teaching in an online environment is not the same as, I'm going to have my coffee, I'm going to sit in my bathrobe, and I can just, leisurely interact with students. No. The amount of back and forth, the number of emails, the number of, even outside of Blackboard, sometimes there's a lot of conversation that takes place. It's far more intensive. So, I think the whole idea of assessment in online, once you really kind of pull the curtain back and you look at what happens, I hope it will dispel some of the fear, agita, or whatever it may be, in terms of it being effective.
James, as an online instructor yourself, what about your self-assessment?
Well, I'm always hard on myself. What do you mean exactly?
How do you determine at the end of the semester whether it's been a successful semester with this online class of yours?
Well, for me, it's a lot of the projects, when I teach online, a lot of the projects that I teach are project-based. There's discussions, but students have to basically create something. So for me, with my discipline, communication and media, digital media in general, the final assessment is, did they finish the project? If they were able to complete this, if it was, if the programming worked effectively, if the layout was efficient, if the model that I'm asking them to design is effective, it's inherent. So I think I have a little bit of a benefit, and this is when I was asking you, Shirley, about certain disciplines being maybe more or less suited to an online environment. A lot of the technical stuff that I like where it's project-based, I think is absolutely great, because they have to, from an assessment standpoint, when they complete the project, it's there. Either it worked or it didn't. In terms of online discussion, in terms of knowing whether or not students have picked up some of the more theoretical aspects of it, it's the amount of engagement. For me, it's like, how engaged are the students? What type of questions are they asking? Are they asking the right questions? Or is it just, what is the quality of the conversation? That's how I basically determine whether or not I've taught that particular class effectively.
I'll ask each of you to respond to this, and face-to-face setting is okay as well as online. The claim that an instructor will learn most how to become a better instructor by receiving instruction from the students that instructor has just attempted to teach. You've already indicated, Jennifer, you asked of some. What about the other two? Because I know everything I learned that works, I was taught by my students. They also taught me what didn't work.
You want to take that one, Shirley? Not to put you on the spot.
No, online teaching is so much more interactive because each person has a voice. You hear each person, and if they don't speak out, you don't see them. So your statement is so much more vivid online because the amount of participation and back and forth, the volleyball game, let's say, is definitely there. And if you're not on the other side of the volleyball game, the rally's not happening. And so online education is extremely accountable and one that is communicative, interactive. But what happens is that if you don't have students who are playing on the one side, then you're not able to have that rally. And online education requires that rally to happen. And so we weed out those students very early that they're not into the game, they're not playing. And I can't interact with someone who's not there. So there's a lot of responsibility on the student to make sure their visibility is there, and therefore the online educational process is extremely rewarding one. But I think what happens is that some students have a misinterpretation of taking online courses, and they don't realize how invested they need to be. And therefore, we weed out those students very quickly, but unfortunately, that falls on the instructor too often. And we are being evaluated on that level when it's usually the student isn't ready for the commitment. But for those who are, it's an extremely valuable, interactive experience, one that